I realized my Valentine's date was already dead when she smiled at me, because the smile she gave wasn't the one she had in her pictures. It was stretched too wide, too stiff, too knowing. And the moment she sat down across from me, wearing the same red dress she had described in her texts, I understood something I should have recognized long before that night. I had been talking to someone pretending to be her. But the real horror started before she even spoke. When she pulled out her chair, her shadow didn't move with her. It stayed perfectly still on the wall behind her, like it was stuck there, frozen while her body moved freely. I should have run right then. I should have listened to the sudden weight in my chest, the instinct screaming that something was horribly wrong. But instead I just stared. Because who expects their Valentine's date to arrive with a smile that looks borrowed? Or a shadow that refuses to follow? Something wasn't just wrong. It was unnatural. And that's when the first question clawed into my mind. If she wasn't the one I had been talking to, then who was sitting in front of me? She leaned forward slowly, like every movement was being pulled by invisible strings. Her eyes were locked on mine, too wide, too bright, shimmering with a glossy red tint the candlelight could not explain. I felt my pulse stutter, like my heart was trying to turn around and run without me. Then she spoke. And that's when everything inside me froze. "I'm so glad you came," she whispered, but it wasn't her voice. It was layered. A woman's voice wrapped around something deeper. Something that sounded like it crawled out of a long, empty hallway. My breath faltered. The restaurant around us was warm and softly lit, filled with couples celebrating love, but somehow everything felt far away. Muffled. Like the world around me was slipping into another place, a darker one. I noticed the waiter pass by. He didn't look at us. He didn't even glance at her. It was like we weren't sitting there at all. She kept staring at me. Not blinking. Not breathing. Just smiling that stretched, stolen smile. And then she said the words that shattered whatever safety I thought I had. "You were supposed to meet her tonight. But she never made it." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" I asked, but my voice barely made it out. Her smile widened, pulling at her cheeks like they were too tight on her face. "She wanted to see you," the voice whispered. "But I saw her first." The air around me grew colder, thick enough to choke on. My hands trembled on the table. My legs refused to move. She slowly reached across the table, her fingers long and thin, the skin stretched too tight over the bones. Her nails dragged lightly over the tablecloth, leaving faint red streaks that didn't look like fabric dye. Then, as if answering the question I was too terrified to ask, she tilted her head and said, "You kept her talking for months. It made her feel loved. It made her feel seen. And that made it easier for me to find her." Her shadow still hadn't moved, but now it was beginning to smile. That's when I understood the worst part of all. The real Melissa never walked into that restaurant. Something else did. Something that had taken her place, using her pictures, her messages, and her last terrified breath. And now it was here for me. My name is Daniel Rivera, and until that night, I always thought Valentine's Day was just another overly romantic holiday meant for people with better luck than me. I'm 27, live alone in a quiet apartment on the north side of town, and work a simple IT job that keeps me glued to a computer more than I'd like to admit. My life isn't exciting, but it's stable, routine, predictable, safe. And on that Valentine's evening, everything felt perfectly normal. The sun had already dipped below the horizon when I stepped out of my apartment, locking the door behind me. The hallway was warm, humming with the low, comforting buzz of a fluorescent light. I remember thinking how unusually calm I felt. Usually, first dates make me nervous. But tonight, I was relaxed, confident even. Maybe it was because I'd been talking to Melissa online for nearly 2 months. She wasn't just another match or a casual chat. She was someone I genuinely connected with. Someone who seemed to understand me, laugh at my awkward jokes, and match my late-night energy. We spent hours exchanging long messages about movies, fears, dreams, and the little pieces of ourselves we usually hide from strangers. So meeting her in person felt like the natural next step. Felt safe. The restaurant we chose was a small, cozy place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just warm lighting, soft jazz music, and tiny candles flickering on every table. The kind of place where people go to celebrate love in a quiet, intimate way. I arrived 10 minutes early, wearing the only button-up shirt I owned that didn't look like it belonged to an exhausted office worker. Inside, the restaurant was peaceful in a way that made everything else fade out. Couples sat close together, murmuring softly over wine glasses. Someone laughed gently from the next table. A waiter passed by carrying a tray with chocolate-dipped strawberries. Even the air smelled warm, vanilla candles, fresh bread, a hint of roses from the Valentine's bouquet on the counter. I chose a table near the back corner, where a single candle flickered lazy golden reflections on a polished wooden surface. I remember running my fingers along the rim of my water glass, feeling strangely content. This was the kind of night I never thought I'd get. The kind I secretly hoped for but never expected to happen. I checked my phone. A message from Melissa flashed on the screen. On my way. Can't wait to finally meet you, smiley face. I smiled. For once, the world didn't feel heavy. For once, life felt gentle. The minutes passed slowly but comfortably. I watched the door each time it opened, expecting her face, her red dress, the one she told me she bought just for tonight. I imagined her laugh, the way her hair might move when she turned her head, the warm awkwardness of two people finally meeting after weeks of excitement and anticipation. The restaurant's hum wrapped around me like a blanket. No tension, no fear, no reason to think anything was out of place. I remember thinking, this might actually be one of those rare nights I look back on and smile. I didn't know, of course, that the world was already shifting, quietly, subtly, like a shadow stretching just a little too far before anyone notices. I didn't know that Melissa would never walk through that door, that something else would take her place, that the warm glow of the restaurant was the last safe moment I'd have for a very, very long time. Because at that point I was just a guy sitting alone on Valentine's night, waiting for a date I believed was on her way, completely unaware that the peace around me was already beginning to crack. At first, I didn't notice anything unusual. I was still sitting at the table, still idly scrolling through my phone, still checking the door every so often for Melissa's arrival. The restaurant felt warm and safe, the kind of place where nothing bad could possibly happen. But then, little by little, the atmosphere began to shift. It started with a sound, a soft, barely there clicking like nails tapping on glass. I heard it once, barely paid attention. Probably just silverware, I told myself. Then I heard it again. Click, click, click. This time it sounded like it came from the window beside my table. I looked over, expecting to see someone brushing past the outside glass, or maybe a tree branch blown by the wind. But the window was still. Perfectly still. Not even a leaf moving. I shook my head and went back to checking my phone. 5 more minutes passed. No Melissa. No message. Something in the room felt different. Nothing big. Just a subtle shift, like the temperature dropping a few degrees, or the air becoming a little heavier. The soft jazz music that had filled the restaurant all night seemed quieter, almost like the speakers were slowly dying. The candle on my table flickered slightly, not from a breeze, not from movement, but with a strange, uneven rhythm. The waiter walked by, but when he passed my table he didn't look at me. Not even a polite glance. His eyes were unfocused, as if he were distracted by something in the periphery of his vision. Something behind me. That was the first time I felt it. A faint prickle crawling up the back of my neck. A feeling of being watched. I turned around slowly, trying not to look paranoid. The restaurant was still alive with couples talking, waiters working, glasses clinking. But something about the energy had changed. The lighting felt dimmer, the shadows in the far corners a little darker than before. I couldn't shake the sensation. It felt like someone's eyes were on me, not in a friendly or curious way, but in a cold, analyzing way. Like they were studying me. Waiting. I checked the time again. Melissa was now 15 minutes late. No message. No call. I typed out a quick, light-hearted text. Hey, all good? I'm here, smiley face. As soon as I hit send, the candle's flame suddenly stretched sideways, as if something had moved past it. But there was no breeze. No movement. Nothing. My chair creaked slightly beneath me, even though I wasn't shifting my weight. Then I heard that sound again. Click, click, click. This time it came from the hallway leading to the bathrooms. Slow, sharp, measured. I looked over, expecting a waiter or another customer walking back, maybe heels on tile. But the hallway was empty. Quiet. Too quiet. My heart thumped once hard. You know that feeling when your brain senses something before you consciously understand it? When your instincts whisper that something isn't quite right. That's what it felt like. I straightened up in my chair, suddenly aware of every sound around me. The scraping of forks, the soft swirl of wine being poured, the distant clatter of dishes from the kitchen. Yet beneath all of that was silence. A cold, expectant silence that didn't belong in a cozy Valentine's restaurant. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, heavier, as if something unseen was standing just out of sight, leaning closer, curious about me. I looked at my phone again. Still no message. And then for the first time that night a thought crossed my mind. Maybe I'm not supposed to be here. The unease settled deeper, crawling under my skin like a slow, tightening warning. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. But I just didn't know what yet. The shift didn't happen slowly this time. It hit all at once, like the entire restaurant exhaled its warmth and inhaled something cold, heavy, and wrong. I felt it before I understood it. A sudden pressure in the air, like someone had dropped an invisible weight onto my shoulders. The candle on my table flickered again, then shrank lower as if suffocating. My chest tightened. That's when my phone buzzed. Finally, Melissa. I snatched it up, relieved for a second. But the message wasn't what I expected. It wasn't from her number. It wasn't even typed normally. Just 2 words, crooked, uneven, like they'd been pressed by shaking hands. Don't turn. I froze. Don't turn? Don't turn what? Don't turn where? My breath hitched. Instinctively, my eyes started to shift to the left, toward the hallway where I'd heard the clicking earlier. Then another message came in. Same number. Same jagged letters. It sees movement. A chill rippled through me. I swallowed and tried to stay perfectly still. The restaurant was quiet now, too quiet. The soft jazz music had completely stopped. The conversations around me had faded. Even the clinking of glasses had died out. Almost like the entire place was holding its breath. Slowly, painfully slowly, I scanned the room without moving my head. Just my eyes. Every person in the restaurant had gone still. Not moving. Not talking. Just staring straight ahead at their plates. Like mannequins frozen mid-scene. A spike of fear stabbed through me. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But the text was clear. Don't turn. I kept my eyes down at my phone, forcing myself to breathe silently. The air grew colder. Heavier. Like something enormous had entered the room and was passing between the tables. I heard it behind me. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Something else. A slow, dragging motion like skin sliding against wood, or a heavy limb being pulled across the floor. A low scraping sound that vibrated through my spine. My heartbeat hammered so loud I was sure it would hear me. Another text buzzed. It's right behind you. My entire body turned to ice. I could feel it now, not just the sound but the presence. The kind of presence that makes the hair on your arms stand up. The kind that feels ancient. Wrong. Hungry. The candle flame on my table bent toward me, pulled by something behind my back. And then something touched my neck. Light. Cold. Like the edge of a wet fingertip running across my skin. My eyes watered in terror. I clenched my jaw to stop myself from gasping. The scraping sound grew louder. Closer. Whatever was behind me leaned in. So close I could feel the air shift with each slow, deliberate breath it didn't quite take. Another message buzzed on my phone. My trembling eyes read it. Don't look at its face. My mind screamed at me to run, but my legs felt locked in place. The weight in the air tightened, pressing against my skull like a hand forcing my head down. Then, without warning, the restaurant lights flickered. Once. Twice. 3 times. On the 3rd flicker, I saw something reflected in the side of my water glass. Just a shape. Just a silhouette. But it wasn't human. Its jaw hung too low. Its limbs were too long, bending in terrible angles as it crouched behind me. And its eyes, God, its eyes, too dim, red glows staring down at the back of my head. The lights went out completely. Darkness swallowed the room. And the scraping stopped. No sound. No breath. Just the slow, expanding terror of knowing something monstrous was inches away from me. Waiting. Choosing. And then in the pitch black, something whispered directly beside my right ear. You're late. The voice was wrong, layered, echoing as if 10 voices spoke the words at once. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't just a bad date. This thing, this presence, this monster had come for me. And I still didn't know why. The moment I realized I wasn't alone in that cabin, something inside me snapped from fear into pure survival mode. My heart had already been pounding, but now it slammed so hard I could feel every beat inside my throat. I didn't think my body just moved. I bolted backward from the bedroom door and stumbled into the living room, nearly slipping on the wooden floor as the footsteps behind me grew faster, heavier, deliberate. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just knew whatever was inside that house wasn't human, and it was coming straight for me. My hand slammed into the kitchen counter as I tried to regain my balance. I reached instinctively for something, anything, my fingers closing around a metal flashlight I'd left earlier. It was small, barely a weapon, but right now it felt like life itself. A deep dragging sound came from the hallway. Not footsteps, more like claws carving into the wooden floorboards. My breath hitched. I backed toward the door, flashlight trembling in my grip, when the lights flickered once, twice, and then the entire cabin dropped into pitch-black darkness. A ringing silence filled the space for a split second. Then thump. A single heavy impact shook the walls. Then another. And another. Like something massive moving toward me in the dark. No, 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 I whispered, voice cracking. I fumbled at the front door, but my hands were shaking so badly I missed the lock 3 times. Behind me, the dragging claws scraped closer. Their sound was slow, purposeful, almost as if it enjoyed watching me panic. The door finally clicked open, and I threw myself outside, nearly rolling onto the cold dirt. The freezing wind hit my face so sharply it snapped me back into full consciousness. I sprinted toward the treeline with everything I had. Branches whipped against my arms as I ran. My lungs burned. My heartbeat drowned out everything else. But behind me, over everything, I heard it. That thing was following me. Fast. Far faster than anything that size should move. I didn't look back. I couldn't risk slowing down even for a second. The flashlight in my hand bobbed wildly with each stride, throwing erratic beams of light through the trees. Every flash lit up shapes, trunks, branches, shadows, but none of them were the thing chasing me. But I could hear it. Right behind me. Breathing. Not normal breathing. Deep, animalistic, guttural. Like air tearing through shredded vocal cords. A fallen tree appeared out of nowhere, and I dove over it, barely clearing the trunk. I hit the ground hard, pain shooting through my knee, but I forced myself up and kept running. Something huge slammed into the trunk right behind me, cracking the wood in half like it was nothing. I choked out a scream. The forest around me blurred. I didn't know where I was going, only that if I stopped even for a second I was dead. The sound of rushing water hit my ears, and I realized I was approaching the edge of the ravine behind the cabin. The river below wasn't deep, but it was fast, icy, violent. I could either jump, or let the thing behind me catch up. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just hurled myself forward and plunged into the freezing water. The shock ripped every breath from my lungs. The current took me instantly, pulling me under, flipping me over and over as the world went black and white with bubbles and moonlight. But even underwater, I heard it. A roar, furious, deafening, echoing over the riverbank. It couldn't follow me. At least not this way. I let the current drag me farther downstream, clinging to consciousness as the freezing water clawed at my senses, praying the current stayed faster than whatever was waiting on the bank. And for a moment, just a moment, I believed I might actually survive. When the river finally spat me out onto the rocky bank miles downstream, I lay there for several minutes, coughing up water and shivering so violently I could barely keep my vision steady. My body felt numb, heavy, almost disconnected, as if the freezing current had washed parts of me away. But I was alive, and for a few fragile moments it felt like I was finally safe. The forest around me was completely silent except for the distant rush of the river. No footsteps. No dragging claws. No guttural breathing. Just the hollow emptiness of the woods before dawn. I pushed myself upright, my limbs shaking uncontrollably, and scanned the tree line again and again, waiting for some impossible shape to step out. Nothing. Still, every instinct screamed that I wasn't out of danger, not really. I was exposed, exhausted, and half frozen. The closest road was maybe a mile away through dense terrain, and my phone had been lost in the river. But staying put felt even worse, so I forced myself to move. One step. Then another. Slow, stiff, and gasping. By the time I reached the dirt road, the sky had begun turning pale gray. Birds were starting to stir. That alone felt surreal. Like the world had the audacity to return to normal after what had happened. I didn't see a car for nearly 20 minutes. When one finally appeared, an old pickup truck, I practically stumbled into the middle of the road waving my arms. The driver, an older man with tired eyes, jumped out, shocked to see me in such a state. "What the hell happened to you?" I couldn't answer. Not really. My words came out fractured and wild. Something about the cabin. Something in the hallway. Something chasing me. He tried to calm me down, telling me I must have imagined most of it. Hypothermia, panic, shock. But when he saw the bruises on my arms, the long slashes in the dirt where something massive had carved the ground outside the cabin door, his expression shifted. He didn't ask more questions after that. He just helped me into the truck and drove. At the small local hospital, the staff checked me for hypothermia, fractures, and water in my lungs. Doctors hovered, asking questions about the cabin, about who might have been inside with me, about why I was out there alone. Their voices felt distant, blurry, like I was underwater again. Police officers were waiting outside my room by the time morning fully arrived. I told them everything, or at least everything I could without sounding insane. They sent officers to the cabin immediately. I expected them to return wide-eyed, shaking, confirming everything I said. I expected photos of claw marks, broken wood, footprints that didn't belong to anything living. What they came back with instead made my blood run colder than the river had. There's nothing there. No claw marks. No broken floorboards. No footprints outside. No signs of forced entry. Nothing. The cabin looked perfectly normal, untouched. One officer even said the dust inside hadn't been disturbed in weeks. They asked me again if I'd been drinking, or if I had a history of hallucinations, or if I'd hit my head. I denied everything, but the more I insisted, the stranger their looks became. They left me with a final note. "If anything else happens, call." But something did happen. That night, after I was discharged, I returned to my apartment and collapsed on my bed, still exhausted and numb. I slept for the first time in almost 2 days. When I woke up, the sun was barely rising, and I noticed something that didn't belong. My bedroom carpet was damp. At first I thought maybe I'd spilled something, but the dampness wasn't a puddle, it was a trail, leading from the window, straight to the foot of my bed. My breath froze in my throat, and there on the carpet, pressed faintly into the fibers like something had knelt there in the dark, was the imprint of a wet hand. Long, thin. Wrong. The police told me nothing followed me downstream, but they were wrong, and I think it knows where I live now.